Once upon a time, there were two groups on either side of the Shiver Peaks. On the west side were the Dredge. The Dredge are an old race that live deep underground under the Shiver Peaks. They work in iron and ore, and they find gems and do all kinds of wonderful war machines and turrets and iron-made products like that that are very valuable. They do not, however, have a whole lot of magic. The other group on the eastern side of the Shiver Peaks is the Flame Legion.
The Flame Legion, which is the worst of the Char. They're constantly trying to expand their territory and their influence. The rest of the Char Nation, thankfully, has abandoned the Flame Legion and left them to their own devices, but the Flame Legion are still there. Their Imperator, Gaharin Balefire, the leader of the Flame Legion, is determined to make himself a god. Tyria has seen this happen before, where normal mortals acquire vast amounts of magical power and become godlike beings. This is what Gaharin Balefire wants, and this was the source, or at least one of the reasons, why they allied themselves with the Dredge as part of the Molten Alliance. Without the Iron Legion to make their war machines for them, the Flame Legion found themselves at a disadvantage. They have powerful magic, but they don't have the kind of ordnance that the Iron Legion provides, and that is something that the Dredge can provide, the Dredge being very mechanically oriented.
The Dredge are naturally opposed to anyone who oppresses others, and the Flame Legion are oppressors. So they had to overlook all of this in order to make this alliance, which would make both sides more powerful. So what they did was they dug a series of caverns underneath the Shiver Peaks, and they began to make hybrid weapons. Once they started making these hybrid weapons, they needed people to test them on. And so they spread out into the local areas and started attacking local residents. They took Norn and they took Char into their caverns as prisoners, and basically ousted and burned everyone else from their homes. This created refugees. And among those refugees was a young Norn named Bram. Bram's homestead was attacked by the Flame Legion early on in the whole process, and many of his friends and family were killed. Once he had saved his homestead, at that point he hooks up with a young Char named Rox. Both Bram and Rox realize that there are prisoners being taken, and they both take it upon themselves to go and rescue these prisoners. And this is where they meet. Over time, they become very good friends as they fight their way through the various weapon factories that the Molten Alliance has put into place and where they're testing on these prisoners. So in the end, it's all about rescuing the prisoners and helping the refugees.
Those poor folks who were driven out of their homes by the Molten Alliance, moving into their territory and burning down their homes and chasing them out of their territory. These people needed somewhere to go. Some of them went to Holbrick, some of them went to the Black Citadel, and some of them took the Consortium up on the Consortium's generous offer to let them settle on South Sun Cove, which, for the players who have played The Lost Shore, will remember, South Sun Cove is incredibly dangerous. There are giant screaming Karka who spit terrible things at you and roll, crushing everything in their path. South Sun Cove was never intended to be a vacation paradise, but the Consortium, being the Consortium, once they had started to put money and time and effort into making South Sun Cove a resort, they're not going to give it up. Their bottom line demands that they have some sort of return on their investment.
My fellow narrative designer Scott McGough and I spent a lot of time working, and it all happened within a little room, the two of us together.
I know she spoke about us being locked in a room for 2 days. That's actually fairly true.
Cloistered for hours on end, laughing. We laughed so much and so had so many great ideas. He and I just played off each other beautifully. We've planned out a whole year in advance.
We sat down, we plotted out month to month what the different storylines were going to be, what the connective tissue between those stories was going to be. For example, linking Flame and Frost to South Sun Cove. From there, we have our action that happens on South Sun Cove, and then there'll be another thread, another piece of connective tissue that leads us from the South Sun Cove content in May to whatever the new content's going to be in June.
We're going to tell stories, big stories, and we're pretty darned excited about that.
So that's about all we can share with you right now. We are very much looking forward to you guys discovering the hard work we've put into this.
Guild Wars 2 is not even a year old, and it's already evolving, and it will continue to evolve.
See you in game.